It'll take a sec for people to get in. And meanwhile, we can share. Hi, Dolores. How are you? Hi, Kay. Very nice to see you here. We'll be sharing for a few minutes, as we always do, and then we will get started. Please do share as much as you can for us. I'm not going to take too much time in sharing tonight because we are getting started a bit late. Okay, that should do it. I hope you will all please help me here and help us. That would be very good. I hope you will all please help me here and help us. That was the delay from Facebook, but here we are now. I'm going to take the promo away. Hi, folks. Please do share as much as you can. Hey, Shane, that's KRTD Media. President of KRTD Media is Shane Coughlin. And also Dolores Pierce is my number one sharer. Thank you, Steve Gonzo, for coming. And thank you, Kay, very much for coming. And Antonio, it's very nice to see you from Portugal. Wow. And Dolores, I see you both on Facebook and on YouTube. Why are you saying, oh, you're saying hello? I thought you were saying hell. And Shane says, love having you on a network, Joe. Great interview planned for tonight. It looks like, yes, I expect this to be a wonderful interview. And of course, my guest for tonight is Daniel Kapelovitz.
It's actually Capelovitz, but yeah.
Okay, Kapelovitz.
Yeah.
Dan Kapelovitz. Okay, thank you for the correction. I'm glad to have that right.
All right, I should have mentioned that before we went live, but that's okay.
That's okay. I mean, I should have known that myself. Okay, so Dan is a highly qualified person. He's a criminal lawyer, a certified criminal lawyer in California. He's also, an animal rights lawyer. He is very highly educated. He's from UCLA Law. He's been practicing for a number of years. He's been Green Party for a number of years. He has a platform which is a wonderful platform. And with that as an introduction, I'm going to turn this over to Dan, who's going to tell us about himself. He's going to tell us about the recall election, and he's going to tell us about his stands, okay, on various issues. From time to time, I'll ask some questions, but he's also going to tell us how urgent the situation is in California, that those of us who are from California do the right thing when they do go to vote. Okay, and by the way, where's my daughter Devora? She's been sharing the hell out of this on Twitter. Where is she? She's a Californian now. She lives in LA, as a matter of fact. Okay, Dan, the con is yours.
All right. Well, I'm in LA also. I'm in Los Angeles. I have lived in San Francisco a couple of years right out of college. So I've lived in both Southern and Northern California. Yes, I'm a criminal defense attorney. Been so for about, 9 years. Been a lawyer for about 12 years. Before that, I did journalism. And I've had all kinds of jobs. So I feel like I'm actually probably could relate to a bigger part of California than most of the candidates, because I've had every crazy job out there. Grocery delivery boy, you name it. So anyway, and I'm running as a Green. I really like the Green platform. And then I didn't even know, I just did it all on my own. And then a lot of people have reached out to me from the Green Party, and they've been very helpful. And I know that if I'm elected, I'm going to have some of the greatest minds I can bring into the administration. I'm not going to fire everybody, but I'm going to bring in people who have been cut out, because we have this two-party system, and actually a one-party system really in California. I'm one of the few candidates, I don't think I'm the only one, but I am one of the few candidates that is actually telling people to vote no on the recall, because I do think even though there are progressive people, including myself, as candidates, I do think the recall is on the ballot because of kind of a right-wing trend where the right wing can't accept elections. So just like Trump couldn't accept the last election, he's trying to do everything. I feel like the Republicans immediately, the second Gavin Newsom got elected, they were trying to recall him, and they finally were able to get it on the ballot because just the situation with COVID, and he made some gaffes going to that restaurant, and he was pretty unpopular. And so they were able to get it on the ballot. And they're doing the same thing with the Los Angeles district attorney. There's a big right-wing recall effort. Hopefully they won't even get that on the ballot. But so it seems to be this new trend where they lose the elections because, the majority of Californians, obviously there's some conservatives and Republicans, but the majority of Californians, I believe, and I think the votes say it, are left-leaning, probably even farther, more progressive than the Democratic Party. But people think they're the only game in town, so that everyone votes for the Democrat. And that's why one thing I'm actually in favor of is ranked choice voting, so people can vote for who they really want to win as their first choice, and then they can vote for the Democrat or whoever as their second choice. The same thing with people on the right. They could vote for, a libertarian or whoever they want to vote for. And then if that person doesn't make it, they can vote for the Republican for the second choice. And I think this will better capture the will of the people, because we'll know who people really want to lead. And even though maybe it won't change the outcome necessarily, but it can in certain situations, like I always use Florida in 2000 as an example. Everyone blamed Nader for spoiling the election, which I don't even agree, but that
was really silly.
But if we had ranked choice voting in Florida, Al Gore would have won, not Nader, because most people would have the Ralph Nader voters would have voted Ralph Nader, probably Al Gore next. And a lot more voters might have voted Ralph Nader as their first choice, but still put Al Gore next. And it was such a close election that Al Gore would have won Florida and he would have won the presidency. So it does sort of also capture, even if the third party or whatever doesn't get elected, it kind of captures the will of the people better, because there are more people that were either for Al Gore or Ralph Nader than for George W. Bush and Pat Buchanan. So and also for proportional government, also to better capture the will of the people. So that's one big thing, just as a way to just change the whole, better the electoral system. Of course, I'm against electoral college too, but I don't think as governor I'm going to have too much of a say in that. But and then there's all kinds of issues. I mean, there's so many issues. As a criminal defense attorney, I'm most familiar with the need for drastic criminal justice reform. United States has more people in prison, both as percentage-wise and as number, as any country in the world. Even China has 1 billion people. We have more people in prison than China. So, I mean, it's just crazy. And it's because of the outrageously long sentences. We have this mass incarceration. These enhancements are often race-related, like gang enhancements, which you almost never see applied to white people, even though there are white gangs. They're actually police gangs out here in LA. They've never been, I think, applied to them. And the bail system is horrible. If you can't afford bail, you're going to get a way worse outcome than you can. So these are all just, things I'm familiar with the most, just because I deal with it every single day. But I'm all into all the issues that, housing, homelessness, that's a lot of people's number one issue. It's crazy here. We have these referendums we've had of like billions and billions of dollars, and it doesn't seem like any of it, it's just getting worse and worse. So that's one of the big issues. We gotta, it's all related. So I'm into, and the Green Party is to renewable energy, creating jobs, renewable energy jobs, which if you help the economy, then of course help people get out of homelessness, or help people prevent them from losing their houses in the first place. We need to protect people who are facing eviction. We need to get people that are unhoused in housing with services. In the criminal justice system, instead of criminalizing homelessness, we need to treat most people in the criminal justice system have drug problems or mental health issues. We need to treat those as drug issues and mental health issues, not as criminal cases. So there's all kinds of things. Of course, I'm a big animal lover. I do a lot of animal rights protest defense, legal observing for animal rights groups sometimes. And we need to protect animals. We have some laws on the books that aren't even really enforced about, caging animals, factory farming. I believe we should make it stronger. We got to protect animals they're doing like these lab testing with horrific conditions. There's so many issues, obviously. And well, if elected, I'm only going to have about a year and 4 months to address them, unless I'm reelected. But we're going to do as much as we can.
Okay, so let me ask you questions specifically.
Okay.
For many people in California, the most important issue, at least in the immediate future, is will California pass a single-payer bill?
Right. So here, my understanding is that when a Republican is in office, the Democratic legislature in California, they pass a single-payer bill, sort of, and then because they know the Republican's going to veto it. And then whenever the Democrats in office, they don't pass it and to protect the governor, I guess. So when I'm elected, I'm going to say, look, I'm going to sign this. You guys got to put it together. I'm not going to veto it. You've done similar things before. Let's get it done. And yeah, we need healthcare is a right, and I believe so for everyone. I mean, it's the right to live in many cases.
Okay, so let us Yes, it is the right to live. Okay, in many cases, there are many people who die each year. The estimates happen to vary. The ratio that I use, actually, generally, I've done some research on this and computations based on a lot of previous research. One out of every 700 and 81 people who doesn't have insurance um, is going to die. In other words, that's the fatality rate. That was true before COVID. It's probably even higher now. I have no idea what that ratio is now. It could very well be down to 1 in 300, because some of the research studies showed that 1 in 300 people that did not have insurance in certain areas were fatalities, in a particular year. That's a huge number each year. Within the COVID pandemic, we might find, in the end, that 80,000 people have died in America because they didn't have insurance. Of course, all in all, many, many more people have died, from COVID for all sorts of other reasons. But I'm just talking of the insurance reason. But the question I have is, if you should be successful, in this election, what will you do to get the legislature in California to pass the single-payer bill? Once again, certainly, there's a lot of sentiment for it in Los Angeles and in some of the other major cities, in California. So how can you use that sentiment to help to get it through the legislature in California?
Well, obviously California is not a dictatorship, so I can't just single-handedly do it.
Of course you can. We know that.
But as governor, what they call the bully pulpit, or you can educate people. You can go out there, make a prime issue, almost shame the legislator into doing the right thing. They can do it. Seems like people do want it. Not everyone, obviously. I think people are afraid the taxes are going to go up. They don't understand that in the long run, it's a lot cheaper for people. I mean, my health insurance rates are ridiculous. I'm sure overall, even my taxes might go up. I'm sure it'd go down. I'm sure that's true for most people. And I don't, that's really, I mean, you could try to put on a initiative or something like that. But I think the legislature could do it. They just got to do it. And maybe,
but also there could be, it would be possible in California to have an initiative, right?
Right.
If somebody were to come forward with such an initiative, would you, as the governor, support it?
Oh, definitely. If it's a good initiative. And I heard Jerry Brown, I think, actually did put on an initiative. I think a tax initiative himself. I mean, he got it done. So governors can, not single-handedly again, but they can do things to make it happen if the legislature won't do it. So.
Right, but would you actually go up and down the state and campaign for it?
Yeah, why not?
Well, say that you were successful, on this occasion, and you were the governor for a year, and 4 months, and let's assume you wanted to continue, and you were campaigning to continue. Then how would you campaign for Medicare for all, or for single payer, I should say?
Well, it'd be related. If I was campaigning in 2022, I would be campaigning based on all of my beliefs and my platform. I'm going to do the right thing. I think some of these governors, well, we know they're beholden to special interests, and the Democratic Party, the mainstream Democratic parties, beholden to a lot of interests. And the legislature too. I'm going to, this whole campaign, I'm just saying what I believe. I don't want to win if it's not based on what I truly believe. And I'd run in 2022 the same way. I might do some things that are unpopular, but I'm just going to do it my way and what I think is right. And if the people agree with me, then they'll elect me. If they don't, then they won't.
That sounds reasonable.
That's simple. It's just that simple.
Yeah, sounds simple. Okay, can you say more about the Green New Deal measures you'd support in California?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's we got to change we get the renewable energy. There also is this economic thing where there's inequality, and we got to deal with that. It's all tied together. I don't know specifically what you're talking about, but
well, specifically, you have on your platform page that you're a supporter of Howie Hawkins's ideas.
Right. I read both his and Jill Stein's, and I don't have them memorized, but I agree with them. I think it makes sense. I voted for him for president. I agree with the Green New Deal and the real, as you said, the eco-socialist version of it, which deals, I guess, more with economics, also inequality, and yeah, I agree with that.
The cost of the Green New Deal, Howie Hawkins' version, was pegged by him at close to $42 trillion.
Okay.
That's $42 trillion over a 10-year period.
Right.
Have you any comments on that?
Well, my whole thing, in terms of how to pay for things, I truly believe that if we become the leader in truly renewable energy, it's going to lift everybody up in terms of the economy. It's going to be more people have tax money to pay, which would go to the state, which could then pay for this. It's going to be like this cycle going up and up and up. That's my theory. And so I don't know about 42 trillion. That's obviously a lot, but you're saying it's 4 trillion a year. That's still a lot for California. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't.
That's certainly a lot for California, but it's not going to cost 42 trillion for California. His 42 trillion figure was for the United States.
Okay. Oh, right. That's not that much, as we're learning now. That's chump. That's chump.
It wasn't going to be 42 trillion for California.
Oh, right. I forget.
It's probably going to be something more in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 trillion for California, considering what percentage of the country California is.
Right. So good point. So again, that as incredibly, that's actually probably doable. You look at how much the infrastructure bill is and all the other stuff they've been spending. I mean, it's trillions and trillions of dollars. It's crazy. And obviously I'm anti-war, which is where we spend most of our money. I don't know about California budget, but the federal budget, a huge percentage goes to.
And we actually spend most of our money as a country on healthcare. Our healthcare spending is now rapidly approaching $4 trillion. It's nearly 20%, of our GDP.
Oh, wow.
At this point. By contrast, if you look at what we spend for the military and Homeland Security and things like that, it must be a little over $1 trillion each year. So our healthcare spending is almost 4 times that.
That's not the government. That's the people spending it, right?
Well, the way they fund everything, for the most part, when it comes to healthcare spending, one way or another, it all comes out of the pockets of the private sector. Either it comes out of it through premiums or copays, or deductibles, or taxes. But in one way or another, it's all coming out of the private sector because the government does not deficit spend when it comes to healthcare.
Right, that's what I'm saying. This $4 trillion it's not the government paying it. It's the people paying it, basically.
It's the people paying it. Yes, basically. When we look, okay, at other countries, Canada is spending 11% of GDP on its healthcare. And the average for OECD countries is a little under, I think it's roughly 9% or something like that. So if we simply copied, okay, from other nations and looked at the most efficient systems among them, we could probably come up with a system. It would probably be a Medicare for all system or a national health service or something like that. That would probably come in cost-wise at roughly 9 or 10% of GDP. We could cut our costs in half. We could have been spending $2 trillion a year now on healthcare rather than the $4 trillion. And the other $2 trillion would have stayed in people's pockets.
Right.
And had it been in people's pockets, a whole lot of it wouldn't be filtering up to the higher levels of the executives in the healthcare industry, healthcare insurance industry, the provider industry, and all the associated industries. And we'd have a lot less of an oligarchy problem than we do now. That's one of the biggest sources of the oligarchy problem, okay, that we have. But we are getting away from a topic. And I want to bring us back to the topic now, and that particular topic is that you are the only qualified candidate who was in the recall race, okay, for governor, in my view. So please tell us, okay, a lot more about your qualifications and your views, because, okay, I really want people to understand, okay, and to know that the other candidates really are not credible, okay, for one reason, okay, or another.
Okay. Well, actually, I don't know all the other candidates, but it seems like the leader, at least in the polls, is Larry Elder, who it would be a disaster if he got elected. So that's another reason I'm saying vote no on the recall. He's for zero minimum wage. He's got all kind, he's been kind of a right-wing nut. Even the Republican Party, I don't think is really that into him. Some of them, he's more of a Trumper. And then there's this YouTube star who's, I think, in second place, and he's not even really a Democrat supposedly, but he's running as a Democrat. So my qualifications: I've never held office, so that's true of almost all the candidates. But as a lawyer, I'm constantly have to devour tons and tons of information. That's what I'd be doing as governor. I'd listen to all the science, all the data, everything. And then once you understand all the data, then I find it pretty easy to come up with a good solution as long as you have all the information. So that's kind of what I do every day. I just get all the facts and I make the decision based on that. I'm, a relatively smart guy. Went to UCLA Law School, graduated in the top 10 people, went to Wesleyan University. I believe, I think just in terms of not necessarily my qualifications, but just what I believe in, I do believe in the Green Party platform. I personally think that probably the majority of Californians, if they actually studied it, would probably agree with the Green Party and me. You ask, obviously everyone differs on certain issues, but pretty much if you ask them just issue by issue, most people are pretty progressive. Not everyone, obviously. And I think with this whole healthcare, I think a lot of people are scared of taxes, and they don't realize that they're really going to save in the long run if you raise taxes to, pay for this single payer healthcare. You're actually going to save them a lot of money. People just get scared of just the word taxes or something like that, or they just don't like the concept of the government taking their money. But I think if you explain the facts to them, I think most people would be behind it. Most people do think that everyone has a right to health care. I think I do. It's just
there may be a great amount of misunderstanding over the costs.
Yeah.
But for example, I've been involved of late in the state of Washington costs, okay, or likely costs. Some people, okay, in Washington have an initiative, okay, going up there to start a whole Washington health trust, the WWHT. Okay, and so they engaged Jerry Friedman, who was the cost estimator, okay, for healthcare for Bernie Sanders, to do a study for them. Okay, and he did a study of what was likely to be the case in 2019, and currently he's working on an updated study, okay, at this point, that he is nearly finished. I think he has finished it. It's but still has to be released to the public. But this seems to be a situation where the single-payer healthcare, okay, in Washington would probably save something like 32 to 33% of projected expenditures on healthcare, and all the people in Washington would be covered at relatively small premiums per month. No copays, okay, no deductibles, okay, things like that. But okay, so savings then of 32 to 33% out of the remaining spending. That's estimated at roughly $67 billion in these figures, okay, and not official, okay, as yet. Okay, it would be the case that 70%, okay, of that spending, of the $67 billion, would actually be covered from various federal sources. I'm not talking necessarily waivers now. It could be done through the WWHT being the kind of intermediary, insurance intermediary that we see in the Medicare Advantage programs, a similar type, okay, of structure, which still takes advantage of the federal funding, but to a very, very great extent. So evidently, by roughly 70% of the $67 billion would actually be covered from federal sources. So the money isn't all coming from state sources. The other 30%, okay, or 20%, okay, of the projected whole before the savings of 32 to 33 million, or roughly 20 billion, okay, in Washington, okay, itself, would be something the state, okay, would have to come up with. Okay, in the Washington plan, the way the state, okay, would be coming up with it would be through increases in payroll taxes on business, much smaller increase in payroll taxes for people. Also, some other minor costs. Okay, if you looked at capital gains tax, okay, in Washington, the payroll tax on business, the payroll tax on people, those three taxes account for 97% of the 20 billion that would have to be generated. Well, actually, there wouldn't be 20 billion generated from those three taxes. Okay, or from all the funding measures. Okay, it would actually be 97% of 32 billion that would actually be produced from that. So that the 20 billion, okay, that was needed would be completely covered, and then there would be a surplus 12 billion that would continue on in the whole Washington trust to carry over to the next year. And in each year, there are projected surpluses for that. Okay. So in a very few years in Washington, it would be the situation that the single payer trust fund would have enough to withstand almost any crash that could take place, okay, in the economy. And when I say almost, I'm only being cautious because I'm trained that way, okay, to be a little bit cautious. From a practical point of view, it looks like unless there were a total collapse of the whole economy, in just a few years, there would be enough of a surplus put by for the program to withstand a whole year of no revenue coming in, and it still would be able to operate. So that's roughly the projected financial situation for Washington. There's no reason to believe it would be any different from for California if it were running the same kind, okay, of program. If people could show you a program like that, how would you feel about that?
Well, the way you put it sounds great. I mean, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, if I'm elected, I'm going to hear from everybody, and I'm going to, like I said, if they got the figures and everything, I'm going to get I'm not a healthcare expert. I'm not saying I am, but you get the healthcare experts, the people like you're talking about. And yeah, if they show me that's the case, definitely, that sounds incredible, so I would definitely be all on board for that. And that's true with any issue.
Sure there would be plenty of people around to inform you about that in detail.
Yeah. Well, but if I'm if I'm elected, let's say we might not know the elections. Let's say we know them September 14th or 15th. I believe I become governor, I think in October. I think they have 30 days to certify the election. That 30 days, I'm probably going to work harder than I've ever worked in my entire life to study every issue possible that I can. And so I'm and getting the best people possible. And it's not much time, obviously, and just start, only like I said, a month until the next January of 2023 to really get a lot done. And I want to, start going right away. I'm not going to take vacations. I'm not going to play golf. I'm not going to go to fancy restaurants with lobbyists. It's going to be the hardest year I've ever worked in my entire life. And I'm going to do it and do the best I can and for the California people.
Yes, I'm sure you will, Dan.
Thank you.
But I really am sure you will do that.
So I'm asking people, like you said, there's 46 people running. I believe I'm the most progressive, definitely qualified. And if everyone who voted no on the recall, or even if half the people who voted no on the recall, it's about 50-50 right now. So let's say 25% of the people who voted no voted for me. I would win the governorship. So you only need a plurality. That's why the Republicans put this on, because they know that's the only way they can get in the governor's mansion. So, people need to get behind somebody. I think that should be me, because we can beat Larry Elder and Caitlyn Jenner and John Cox and all these other people.
Yes, and Kevin Paffrath.
Yeah, Kevin Paffrath, who's now second in the lead. It's only because, he has a lot of YouTube followers. I guess he's a landlord, has a real estate show. I don't really know much about him, but it's incredibly, he's
the way I became a little familiar with him, okay, is that he's been doing some YouTube things on investing. And the way he started off is each day he would inform people on how the stimulus picture was actually looking. Would they be getting their stimulus checks? Would it be a $600 stimulus check? Would it be $1,400? Would it be $2,000 stimulus checks? And then, he would give the news of the day, okay, about the stimulus checks. He's a young man, quite a young man. He looks like he must be 27, 28, maybe 30 or something like
Yeah, I
that.
think he's 29 or something.
So good estimate, okay, on my
Yeah.
part. He's made a good deal of money, okay, in investments. He has a libertarian streak that I think is rather strong. He has no understanding of government finance, of how it actually happens, but he has a lot of understanding of what happens on the stock market. So it sounds like he's financially a very knowledgeable person, but his YouTubes were actually very, very good in terms of reporting on what had happened politically on a particular day. But his understanding of politics was, from my point of view, reasonably naive. Okay, he didn't appear to have a structure of thought for politics that went any further than the practical. Okay,
Yeah.
from my point of view, he is not really qualified, okay, to be governor. But I will say this about him: he's a very bright young man, and he learns things very, very fast. He doesn't sound like much of a Democrat, though, to me.
Yeah, I don't think he is. I think he decided to run as a Democrat. Probably think he got the Democrat vote.
Yeah.
And he is in the lead for Democrats right now. I guess I'm probably the lead for the Green Party right now. There's one other Green candidate.
Yeah, you probably are in the lead for the Green Party. But what was his polling at this point? Is it 3%?
I'm not sure, actually, but I think it's actually higher than that. I think John Cox has gone down. John Cox is down to like 3% or 5% now. And he was in the lead. You know, anything can happen in a month. We only got 2 weeks. Anything can happen in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and a lot of people already voted.
Anything can happen, yes. And by the way, we have one person here who has voted no on the recall. Steve Wolfbrand has voted no, okay, on the recall. So he's, did he say he voted no on the, no, he said he voted for the recall. I'm sorry. Okay, I made a mistake on that. He voted for the recall, and on question 2, he voted for you.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you indeed, Steve.
I'm getting a lot of calls from people saying, because just random calls saying, I voted for you, so, obviously I'd like to see a real detailed poll of what's going on, but at least anecdotally, it sounds like I'm winning. Everyone I hear from voting for me, but but yeah, so that's great. And, I'm voting no on the recall. I'm not a huge fan of Gavin Newsom. It's not like, Aaron Chemerinsky, the constitutional scholar, was saying it might be this election is unconstitutional. And because Gavin Newsom could get 49% of the vote, but then someone could win with 20% of the vote. But a vote for no on the recall isn't a vote for Newsom. Yeah, it's a vote to keep him in office. But I don't see it as a vote for Newsom. I see it as a vote against the recall. And so I don't think that is unconstitutional. Maybe it'd be a little fair if Gavin Newsom could also put his name as one of the people that replaces him, I guess. I wouldn't be against that. I think that maybe that would be sort of fair. Or I guess you can't even write him in. Maybe they could allow him to be written in, but I don't think it's two different separate votes. One's whether to keep him and one's who to replace them. And under
under the rules for the second vote, he can't be one of the candidates.
Right. And
which is unfair to me.
There's actually, I guess some voters actually initiated a lawsuit demanding that he be able to put his name as one of the 46, or 47, but that can't happen. I mean, it's too late now. All the ballots have gone out anyway. I don't think that lawsuit's going to go anywhere because I don't think it is unconstitutional because it's two totally separate votes. One's whether you want him and one's who you want. And so under Chemerinsky's theory, if there are only two candidates in the recall on the second question, then that would be constitutional because one of them would probably get 50% or more. So that shouldn't, the constitutionality shouldn't be a function of how many people are running. So I don't agree with that.
Right, but that's only to say that this was a very, very badly written provision. I think it's in the Constitution, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's some talk of they're changing it, or they might have changed it. I mean, this happened in 2003, but it was a little different because Arnold Schwarzenegger actually did get more votes than voted no on the recall. So
Right.
people weren't upset about that because on that issue because more people did actually vote for him than voted to keep Gray Davis in office. So there wasn't that issue. I don't think that's not going to happen this time. There's no one as famous, popular as Arnold Schwarzenegger running. Larry Elder's probably, besides Caitlyn Jenner, is the most well-known, I guess. Why he's in the lead. Caitlyn Jenner, no one's really taking her candidacy too seriously, including her, it sounds like. She went to Australia to do some reality show. I guess she's back now. But, yeah. I think
Steve asks a question.
Okay.
He says, Doc, that's me. Can you ask him why he only wrote, quote, "Can you dig it," unquote, in the second ballot?
Okay. This has been highly controversial. Probably the most controversial thing I've ever done. But let me answer that. So, first of all, they charge $25 a word. So that's why I kept it short. I spent $100. That's all I spent on this campaign, except for the filing fee. Unfortunately, this is a side topic, but the Democrats really pushed this election. Like, I thought this election was going to happen in November. I'd really have time to fundraise, do all kinds of events, all kinds of stuff. They shoved it to September. Basically, they told us on the Thursday before 4th of July weekend that we had to get our paperwork on Friday. We had to get signatures by the 6th there's no actual business day really. And that's to get the in lieu of signatures. And then I was actually out of town. I had plans. I went home to visit my parents. So I had to get my signatures in 2 days, and I had to get my statement, my photo. And so there wasn't much time, but I decided I like the "Can you dig it?" I don't know. Maybe it's kind of vague, or it can mean all kinds of things. With all the controversy, I was thinking, well, no one really cared that Obama had a poster that said "hope." Like, that's only one word. It's just as like you can read into it whatever you want, what you hope for, what can you dig it, whatever it is. And so a lot of people, I think, some people in the Green Party, they're really mad that they thought I was making a joke of it, and I wasn't. They said one person pointed out, if you wanted to save money, you could have put visit Kapelovitz.com, and that'd only be $50. So maybe I should have done that. But I kind of like the "Can you dig it?" It's come a bunch of different things in pop culture, like the Warriors movie. I don't know if you know, there's this famous thing where it's like the guy's like, "Can you dig it?" And it's all throughout pop culture and culture. And I get a lot of calls just every day. I can dig it. I can get letters saying I can dig it, or I get letters sometimes say I can't dig it. Saying one guy wrote me an email saying that he can't stand that I said, "Can you dig it?" But he's going to vote for me because he hopes I'm the first governor to be murdered in California. So at least they got his vote. That's all that matters.
Awful.
So it's been very controversial.
Terrible story. That's awful.
But I'd say it's about 10-1, the positive to the negative. So, and maybe a lot of the people call me are too young to vote, because it seems like a lot of them are younger people. They say, "I can dig it." But yeah, and you can't put your whole platform on there. I mean, yeah, you could. I don't know. I actually don't. I think people don't read the longer ones, to tell you the truth. My friend, I'm friends with another candidate named Adam Papagam, and he put "love you," only had 2 words, and he's gotten the same thing. He gets a lot of calls, "love you." It's just, I don't know. You never know. He showed me an old one from another campaign where some guy put this long, like, binary number, like 1001001. So I don't know. I wanted to have more fun with, I actually imagined this campaign a little bit more. I studied like Hunter S. Thompson's campaigned for sheriff in Aspen, I think it was 1970, and Jello Biafra's run for mayor of San Francisco in the 70s, and I'm a big fan of like the Yippies and Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin and their techniques. I mean, I sort of imagined my first was going to do more kind of like far out stuff, still have the platform and the positive ideas, but really get out there. And I think if I had till November and I had the fundraising, I think I could make it a really awesome campaign. I mean, I'm doing what I can now. I actually just did a trial all last week. I was in trial.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I didn't have much time to campaign last week. I won, got not guilty on both counts, so that's
You're
good.
welcome.
But
Congratulations.
oh, thank you. So yeah, and I'm still working full time. I was in court all day today. That's why I couldn't even get a hold of you today. But yeah, I like the Can You Dig It? I think people are starting to grow on it.
Something like
Yeah. But yeah, you had to give a check for $6,200 or $50 because in case they determined how many words you used, but then they only charged me $100. Yeah, but there's no. I haven't seen a statement that just blows my mind or anything. It's not like, one guy wrote search YouTube. That was his statement. So CBS just interviewed me about that. I think they're interviewing me and Papagan, this other guy, about the short statements. So we'll see. Maybe it's going to turn out some votes.
I sure hope so.
Oh, me too.
I sure hope so. Okay, so what are your ideas at this point for turning out votes?
Just right now, unfortunately, all I'm doing really is I'm doing a lot of interviews. I mean, you reach more people with an interview than going door to door, probably. Maybe not. I'm doing a lot of like podcasts and news outlets, and I question, you get a billion questionnaires, and some you just can't answer, you just don't have time, or some are like total right-wing things, like, I don't know, the questions they ask, it's not, there's no point in even answering them. But yeah, I answer calls, emails, letter, just reaching people word of mouth. I get a lot of word of mouth. A lot of people contact me I haven't heard from in like decades. They're like, oh my God, you're running for governor. So it's getting out there. I know a lot of people, and I've lived here, I live in California since '93. I think if all my friends voted and they told maybe 10 people, I think I would win this election. I have a lot of friends. I'm serious. So I go to court every day. Every lawyer, I say, oh my God, I'm voting for you. Even judges, they haven't said they're going to vote for me, but they're like, oh, I see you're running for governor. Here's our next governor, So people know about it. At least, people know me. But and the Green Party, here's another weird thing. Like, they couldn't, for the actual Green Party to endorse somebody, they had to do it the same day that we turned in our paperwork. So they had no idea who was actually going to be on the ballot to endorse. So it's kind of ridiculous. So they didn't endorse anybody because they didn't even know who of us was going to get on the ballot. And so you look at the ballot, it only has 2 people that are endorsed by the party. There's a Libertarian, and I think there's I forgot, some other party, third party. And so I think that would have helped but they didn't know. Like I said, there's a woman named Veronica Fimbres who was very popular in the Green Party, and she couldn't get on the ballot. So I have, since then, I've gotten some endorsements from, I think, Sacramento Green Party, some other ones. So I know that a lot of Greens know about it, and a lot of people vote Green. I mean, actually, it was no party preference for many, many years, but I'd vote Green all the time. So I think a lot of people do vote for Green Party candidates. They like the Green Party. They just, this race, you really can vote for who you want, because you're not really worried about, oh, we got to get behind this Newsom or Al Gore or something. I think people can vote their conscience. If there was somebody who was one vote away from Larry Elder, who was, I could see that, them voting for them. And I think that's Paffrath's plan, is he hopes like Democrats are just going to back him, but I don't think he's the right choice. I'm hoping people, I think it's building. I hope we have enough time for it to really build and build, so get it up there. But that's basically it. How I'm doing some online debates, things like that. But the mainstream, there's no mainstream media debate, and obviously they can't have 46 people debating each other, but like the Republicans were able to have a debate, like at the Nixon Library, and get it on, I think, Fox News. And so a lot of it's the media.
So I have a question for you. It's actually Steve Wolfbrand who asked this question. I think it is a good question. Can you get an endorsement from by Kenneth Mejia?
I actually don't know who that is. I don't know all these people. Who's that?
Okay, he ran for Congress as a Green. Okay, a couple
Okay.
of times. Okay, in California now. I think he ran. Oh, I don't know. It was my daughter's old district, so she is here tonight, and she can probably tell us what the district number was. Okay, but he ran a couple of times.
He ran recently, right?
He ran in. I think he ran in 2016 and 2018. I'm not sure but whether he ran in 2020.
Okay.
Okay. There's a woman who is now running as a Democrat. Okay, her name is Angelica Dueñas.
Okay.
And she had previously run as a Green Party candidate as well, I think, a couple of elections ago. But now, but she's running as a Democrat. And she's a very attractive candidate as well. And then there was also Rodolfo Cortez. He ran in, I believe, 2018 and in 2020, I think, in the California 39th district. It was the 39th or the 40th district. Okay, I interviewed him a few times. He was a wonderful candidate. He's a young man, Stanford, psychology PhD, very personable, very humanistic, very bright, but very, very good on platform, okay, in economics. He would be a good person to seek out, actually, for an endorsement.
Yeah, I mean,
He is popular in his district.
I mean, I should be getting all these endorsements, obviously.
And he is still Green Party, I think. He hasn't shifted to the Democrats or anything like that.
Yeah.
He is still Green Party. Okay, so Rodolfo Cortez and Ken Mejia, okay, and Angelica Dueñas might possibly be a person, who would give you an endorsement. Steve Wolfman says, yes, Rodolfo is super cool.
Okay.
Rodolfo Cortez Barragan is his full name.
Do you know who Michael Feinstein is?
Yes, he is your co-author.
Yeah,
he wrote for LA Progressive.
Yeah,
That's how I know.
He's very behind the campaign, and he was elected as city council and mayor of Santa Monica, and he's endorsed me. But yeah, it'd be good to get these big greens and just other people. I it's just I like I said, I wish if I did this again, I would really put a lot more, even before getting on the ballot, like lining up endorsements. This is my first time running. There is talk of me possibly running for, if I don't win the governor race, running for attorney general next year in the 2022 election. And I've learned a lot this campaign. So if I don't win governor, I may be running for attorney general. Right.
But at this point, your main business has to be winning this governor's race.
Yes, definitely.
But you really are the best candidate, and you really have to convey that to people, because we really need you to win. We really do. We can't have Larry Elder as the governor.
Oh, right. Well, I just need you and about 1 million more, and I think I got it.
Okay. Well,
I already got a lot. People have already voted. They're sending me photos of their ballot. So.
Okay. So this is a red beret, okay, that I'm wearing. And the reason why I'm wearing a red beret is I was recently presented, actually, for red berets by the organization known as the Red Berets. They are an organization devoted completely to Medicare for all and single payer, and fighting on all fronts, which means also fighting for national Medicare for all, okay, as well as fighting in the states, as well as fighting in terms of all kinds of mass actions and getting city council resolutions, okay, as well. They support these types of actions. And I have been trying to enlist their help in supporting you. Specifically, they are expert at Twitter campaigns. They can cause things to go viral on Twitter. They have before, and I'm hoping they're going to do it again for you. And we have some Red Berets here tonight, specifically Jeffrey Denton, who is fairly high up, okay, in that organization, and myself. As far as I'm concerned, but I'm a recent addition. I've been working with them now only since the end, okay, of May, but have gotten very closely integrated with the organization. I was hoping the executive director of the Red Berets, Laura Fielding, was going to be here tonight. But in any case, I'm sure she's going to get a chance to watch this. And I'm sure a number of other folks are also going to get a chance to watch it. Amber Grigo is here. And she, okay, is one of the Red Berets as well. Let's see who else I see here. So there are three of us here, okay, at this point. The significance of the Red Beret is that it represents the thread of red, the thread of blood that leads to Medicare for all. And it's the thread, the red thread, that binds us all together. And also, Liesel Girl is now here, also known by her Twitter name of 50 Lines Only. And she is a policy wonk and a very, very remarkable character indeed. And you see the hashtag fighting, okay, on all fronts. I'm glad you could make it, Lisa. We really need you here. So there is the capability to coordinate and get a Twitter campaign going that can bring in other stars on Twitter. I think that there are a lot of very, very prominent people on Twitter. And by the way, my daughter was tweeting at Shailene Woodley earlier this evening and Justine Bateman, and also Mark Hamill as well, to try to get their support in tweeting for you. But thank you, Devorah. I thought that was inspired. Anyway, my daughter Devorah does internet work, and also she acts, which is why she's living in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
Point. And she's actually quite a good actor, but of course I'm very, very biased about that. So anyway, so.
Yeah, I haven't really hit it. I do know a lot of Hollywood types, and I haven't even really hit them up. I was going to do all these fundraisers, and like I said, but yeah, I should hit them up for endorsements as well.
Okay, I'm not sure you need the fundraisers. Okay, at this point.
Well, yes, that's not going to happen.
What you do need is for you to suddenly go viral on Twitter, so that the roughly 350 followers you have now grow very, very quickly to thousands upon thousands, okay, of followers,
right,
on Twitter, because they can make a lot of noise for you, and that noise extends also to Facebook, and it also can help when it comes time to vote. And I always keep in mind that you probably need only 20 to 25% of the vote to win. Okay.
You don't even, I'm not going to. You don't even need that. I don't think. I think it's going to be like 18% or 15%.
Well, I don't know. It depends on what happens with the Larry Elder. He was polling. He was polling at 18%, right?
Yeah, I think at one point. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the most recent polls, but yeah, you could win 10%. You could win 3% theoretically, mathematically, if it's split up even enough. But yeah, I think the winner is going to win it with less than 20% if the recall goes through.
Yes, I'm sure that's a possibility, but from your point of view, what has to happen is that you suddenly get very, very, very hot.
Yeah,
and that's the task that we face. In other words, that's the task that we, who would like to see you be the fail-safe, have to make happen over the next 2 weeks. So we will be trying to do that for you.
All right. Well, actually, I got to get going because I got to reach more people. But thank you so much for having me on your show.
It was my pleasure.
All right. Glad we got it to work out.
It was a great pleasure, Dan. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, it was great to meet you, and I'm sure I'll talk to you in the future.
Okay, it was great to meet you too. And good luck.
All right.
And we'll be fighting for you.
All right. Thank you for your support. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone else out there.
Okay. Bye, Dan.
Bye.
Okay, folks. So the message, okay, I want to deliver again to everybody here is insofar as we can organize a Twitter campaign for him, that is the least something we can do. We all know that's a long shot, but we all know that the Red Berets have the power to generate that kind, okay, of Twitter campaign. And that is essential for Medicare for All, because we are not sure. Yes, I know that she did. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so we are not sure that if Gavin Newsom survives, that he would ever vote, that he would ever sign, okay, a Medicare for All if it came to his desk. We certainly know that he's not going to campaign for it. Yes, he'll campaign on it when he's running for office again, but he's not going to campaign for it if he survives. And he has another year and 4 months to serve as the governor of California. We probably won't hear anything about it unless it somehow passes the legislature. And then we'll probably hear that he doesn't want to sign it for this excuse or that excuse or some other excuse. Because what would you expect from Nancy Pelosi's nephew or cousin or whatever he is? His donors are not going to want that. We cannot trust him to sign it. As Joe, the Liesel girl, says, Joe, and she says, Red Berets, Lisa is here. Yes, I know you are here, Lisa. That's wonderful. So please. Now, I'm sorry I'm not running for California, because I know that I am qualified to be the governor, okay, of California. And one of the qualifications is that you have to believe that you could be the governor of California and do a good job at it. But you also have to be a resident of California, and you have to be running in this campaign, which I am not. So the closest thing to someone like me who's running is probably Dan Kapelovitz. So I'm saying, let us get behind him, okay, and do what we can. So now I have a bonus for you. Part 3 of Stephanie Kelton's series on what Americans have to know about congressional pay-go is now out. And we do have a little time left to cover it. So I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to go through it with you. And that's going to be our little bonus for tonight to get you warmed up, okay, and going for Dan, who obviously, by the way, doesn't know a thing about MMT. That was pretty obvious when we started to interview him. But I'm quite sure that when he becomes the governor of California, he will quickly learn what he has to learn about it. And one of the things he has to learn is don't be shy when it comes to lobbying for funds at the federal level. Be strident and be aggressive. Make sure that everybody knows that you know that the federal government is a monetary sovereign and it can afford to give California or to provide for California the funds it has to provide for California for a variety of purposes. So let's get to that now. And here is Stephanie's part 3. What every American needs to know about the congressional pay-for game. It's on her post on Substack, which is The Lens. And if you subscribe to that, you will be very happy that you subscribe, because she is a very, very personable writer. Everything is very well framed. Everything is very easy to read and is easy to understand. And she says, this, I think, the final post in a 3-part series on the congressional, quote, pay-for, quote-unquote, game. If you missed the first 2, shame on you. Why haven't you subscribed? You can find them here, part 1 and part 2. And she asks, shall we play a game? My earlier posts focused on the fact that the, quote, pay-for, unquote, game is a misnomer. Lawmakers pretend to pay for their spending by drafting legislation that, at least on paper, presents the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, with a credible, quote-unquote, wink-wink plan to zero out any budgetary impact from its spending. If you can keep the deficit from increasing, then you can claim that you have paid for your spending. Bear in mind that this is a game. No one actually knows what the budget outcome will be next year, 3 years from now, or a decade from now. All lawmakers know is how much they're proposing to spend, say $3.5 trillion, and how they're proposing to offset the budgetary effects of that spending. What actually ends up happening to the deficit over time depends not only on deliberate changes to the tax code and planned spending, but also on the future state of the domestic and global economy, the stock market, and a host of other unknowables. CBO doesn't forecast recessions, but of course they're inevitable. And when the economy softens or goes into recession, the automatic stabilizers kick in, pushing certain federal outlays, e.g. unemployment insurance benefits, higher and tax receipts lower. That means that the revenue estimates that are used to score legislation today are only, quote, paying for, quote unquote, proposed spending in the most tenuous sense of the phrase. It's a numbers on paper game. If the numbers turn out to be wildly off so that the projected revenue never materializes, it doesn't even matter. The spending is baked in once the legislation becomes law. It's an ex ante, quote, pay for, unquote, game, meaning that lawmakers are just trying to tell a half convincing story about how they plan to keep the proposed spending from adding to the deficit before they vote to authorize it. Once the legislation passes, i.e. ex post, actual tax revenue can come in substantially lower than originally estimated. By that point, the game is over. The money will get spent regardless. There's a little footnote there. We'll see later what the footnote says. I'll be interested to wait for that. The next section is called, don't call it a, quote, pay for, unquote. It's time to stop asking lawmakers, how will you pay for it? It's time for members of Congress to stop responding to the question with a laundry list of so-called, quote, pay fors, unquote. Why? Because it obscures what the budgeting game is really about, and because it traps us in the lexicon of the neoliberal household metaphor. It's bad economics, masquerading as, quote, sound finance, unquote, that constrains public policy by forcing members of Congress to act as if they need to budget like a household. If you've read The Deficit Myth, then you know that the first chapter of the book is titled, quote, don't think of a household, unquote. I start there because the household budget analogy is at the root of so many other myths and misunderstandings about the way the budget works and what our nation can afford to spend. And since you're reading a newsletter called The Lens, you know that my analytical framework is filtered through the lens of MMT. In MMT, we want to reveal, not obscure, the truth about the mechanics of government finance. To do that, we should avoid using terms and metaphors that work well when we apply them to currency users, households, businesses, provinces, or state and local governments, but have no applicability to a currency issuing government like the United States, China, the United Kingdom, Japan, Sweden, Australia, Canada, and others. Taxes are important in all these countries, but not because they, quote, pay for what these nations spend on healthcare, education, and military, and so on. As Dean Baker put it, quote, but we know the point of taxes is not actually to raise revenue. The point is to reduce consumption, to decrease demand in the economy, unquote. The congressional, quote, pay for, unquote, game gets this exactly backwards. Just think about it. Have you heard a single Democrat argue that the point of raising the corporate income tax rate, closing loopholes, or raising taxes on those making more than $400,000 is to dampen consumer spending in order to offset demand pressures in the economy? I doubt it. And that's because when you're playing CBO's budget scorekeeping game, the point of matching higher spending with higher taxes is to reduce pressure on the deficit. Whereas in MMT, the budget outcome is never a target of concern. It might make sense in the context of MMT to pair higher taxes with higher spending, but not for the sake of keeping the deficit in check. Instead of starting with the promise that all spending should be fully offset, MMT urges us to think harder about whether and how to offset any proposed new spending. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, I worked with a team of economists to model the macroeconomic effects of student debt cancellation. Basically, we asked a hypothetical, quote, what would happen if all, that was then, 1.4 trillion in outstanding student loan debt was simply wiped away? I think now it's something like 1.8 trillion. We could have modeled the policy assuming a wealth tax or whatever to, quote, pay for it, unquote. But that would have put the cart before the horse. Instead of assuming the need for offsets, we looked for evidence that the offsets were necessary to keep inflation in check. We didn't find it. That's what the models told us. The inflationary effects of canceling the debt are macroeconomically insignificant. In the FAIR model simulations, additional inflation peaks at about 0.3 percentage points and turns negative in later years. In the Moody's model, they use two different models, the effect is even smaller, with the pickup in inflation peaking at a trivial 0.09 percentage points. These are percentage points of GDP, by the way, gross domestic product. In other words, we found that there was ample fiscal space to cancel the debt without the need for offsets. Why? Because the impact on inflation was so trivial. Basically, the models told us the economy could easily handle the induced increase in consumer spending, so we wouldn't end up with, quote, too much money chasing too few goods, unquote. What if that hadn't been the case? What if our models had predicted a more worrying inflationary impulse? Well, that's when it makes sense to think about building in some offsets, not to, quote, pay for the spending, but to keep it inflation neutral. And that's where the hard work comes in. It's also where the MMP lens offers a distinct advantage over the conventional pay-for game. When you're playing the conventional budgeting game, you're looking for big revenue raisers like the so-called, quote, ultra-millionaires, unquote, tax, which is estimated to bring in $3 trillion over 10 years. The problem is that a wealth tax makes a great pay-for but a lousy inflation offset. Here's how I put it in the deficit myth. There is a strong case to be made for taxing the rich, and we need to do it. But we need to do it strategically, recognizing that the purpose of the tax is not to pay for government expenditures, but to help us rebalance the distribution of wealth and income, because the extreme concentrations that exist today are a threat to both our democracy and to the functioning of our economy. Think about it, Jeff Bezos, the richest man in America, has an estimated net worth of $110 billion. Probably worth more now, but that was a quote from the book in 2019. How many fewer cars, swimming pools, tennis courts, or luxury vacations will Bezos purchase after 2% of his wealth is taxed away? The answer is not many. A small annual tax on a fraction of his net worth isn't going to crowd out much of his spending when it comes down to it. He's more of a saver than a spender. But billionaires save their wealth in the form of financial assets, real estate, fine art, and fair coins. A wealth tax might make the infrastructure bill appear fiscally responsible, but it makes a lousy offset. The problem is that because this particular tax is levied on a tiny cadre of uber-rich people, it won't open much, if any, fiscal space. That doesn't make it a bad idea on other grounds. It just means it's not an effective way to mitigate inflation risks. That's why MMT recommends a different approach to the federal budgeting process. one that integrates inflation risk into the decision-making process so that lawmakers are forced to stop and think about whether they have taken the necessary steps to guard against inflation risks before approving any new spending. MMT would make us safer in this respect because it recognizes the best defense against inflation is a good offense. We don't want to allow excessive spending to cause inflation and then fight inflation after it happens. You want agencies like the CBO helping to evaluate new legislation for potential inflation risk before Congress commits to funding new programs so that the risks can be mitigated preemptively. So you might say that MMT would have us replace the pay-for game with an offset game. It would force lawmakers to integrate inflation risk into the federal budgeting framework, and it would force them to be candid about the rationale for tax hikes or spending cuts. Until then, look to people like House Budget Committee John Yarmuth and Senator Brian Schatz to lead the charge in moving us in the right direction. And quote again. So I don't play the pay-for game. I reject the pay-for game. After the Republicans did the $1.5 trillion in paid-for tax cuts, as we're doing, and as we're doing a bipartisan appropriations bill, which I support, which is also an increase in federal spending that's unpaid for, I just reject the idea that only progressive ideas have to be paid for. We can work on that as we go through the process, but I think it's a trap. One of the games that the Democrats do in response to is, how are you going to pay for it? Is you say, quote, well, carried interest, unquote. I could give you 14 things that would generate $1 trillion, but I just don't think we should be playing the pay-for game right now. A strange game. The only winning game is not to play. How about a nice game of chess, says Steph. Here are the notes. Here is see the effect of automatic stabilizers on the federal budget, and that is a reference to a CBO document entitled Automatic Stabilizers, one column. Let me see what that is. The effects of automatic stabilizers on the federal budget as of 2013. That's a CBO piece. I don't know who it was written by. It is the author is not named in this case. So I haven't had a chance to read the piece. I don't know if it's buried somewhere in the piece, which sometimes they do. Second footnote, that's because the Federal Reserve stands in partnership with Congress and the Treasury as the government's fiscal agent, facilitating the smooth clearing of all government spending via a complex set of institutional arrangements and facilitating practices. And footnote 3, Stephanie adds, I should add that it only makes a great pay-for if you have the votes to pass it, and Democrats don't have the votes. They don't have the votes to pass it. Where was footnote 3 again? That footnote 3 was in reference to the wealth tax. That the problem is that a wealth tax makes a great revenue pay for, but a lousy inflation offset. And then a footnote 3, to jump to the bottom, is again, I should add it only makes a great pay for if you have the votes to pass it. And Democrats don't have the votes. So I thought you'd be interested in that part 3. It's a good piece of MMT reasoning, MMT-based reasoning, as it's applied to politics, as what happens when you look at the politics through an MMT lens. That's what Stephanie did here, and she did it absolutely masterfully. Okay, in closing, before I go to your comments, I want to get back, to Dan. by Kapelovitz, sorry. I got to get that pronunciation right. Kapelovitz. Okay, I think that Dan is clearly the best qualified person who's running for that post right now. If I had to say what more he needs to believe that he can be the governor, that it's important for him to be the governor, that it's important for people to vote no to Newsom and vote for him on the second question. I don't know if he's really clued in to how important it is for people to have Medicare for all. He looks like someone who'd support it. He looks like someone who would sign it. But I would hope that if he does get into that situation, if he does get into that particular situation, why, thank you, BL. Now, BL says, I love Dr. Firestone. Thank you, BL. If he does get into that particular situation, he's going to learn a lot more about it. And he's going to love it, I think, a lot more than he does now. Because he seems like a serious person who cares about people. He seems like a real human being and not like a robot. And that's an important qualification for becoming the governor of California, too, in my view. That may be the most important qualification. So there we are. I'm going to take your comments again. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for being here. I'll go back to the beginning. Where Jeffrey Denton starts at 9:14. Yep, the Greens used to fill stadiums before they were destroyed from the inside. Antonio Calhouse says, with ranked choice voting, the parties are less kingmakers and more proponents of solutions. Steve Wolfbrand says, hoping he slides in. Larry Elder sucks. So before I go on and read the rest of the comments, I do want to tell you, for tomorrow, but Sherry Wise is coming on. I'm having a conversation with Sherry Wise, who works for the Department of Agriculture and has been studying monopoly and antitrust, in this country. And she's a real expert on this subject. She's seen some very, very strange things. She's going to tell us about those things. She's going to tell us about the corruption from the inside. And we really need to hear that. And she's a Red Beret too, by the way. And she's a supporter of single-payer systems at the state level as part of a larger movement to get us to Medicare for all. There have been some more recent attacks on the idea of fighting on all fronts. And in due course, I will meet by those attacks. And you can be sure that there is not a valid point that has been made by the attackers yet. I will take care of them in due course. I need to find the time to do that. Steve Wolfbrand says, Doc looks like a bon vivant in that hat. I don't know if I should thank you or not, Steve. Amber says, if he were to be appointed governor, however that process works, would he be for or against green-lighting the parole of Sirhan Sirhan? I don't know. I don't know what Sirhan Sirhan's condition is now, but working as a criminal lawyer, he's a defense attorney. So if there's any merit to Sirhan's deserving a parole at this point, and I am not myself familiar with this case, I haven't been paying attention to it. But, okay, if there's any merit, okay, in a parole for him, then I'm sure Dan is going to recognize it, okay, and understand it. But I can't speak for him, of course. Steve Wolfbrand says it's an election. Steve says, I think Sirhan got mind-fucked by the CIA. He has no memory of killing RFK. Evelyn Napon, can Dan speak to the California fires and the water there? I should have asked him about that. I'm sorry that I didn't. I wasn't really fully prepared for this. It came up but rather quickly. And of course, I've known about the California fires because Devorah tells me about them all the time. I know about the terrible job that Newsom did on COVID. It seems like the governors of our big states, New York, Florida, California, Texas, all did really terrible jobs, okay, on COVID. Two Democrats and also two Republicans. They all did really terrible jobs. I think the Republicans are still doing terrible jobs. But I don't know that Gavin Newsom is doing any better now than he was before. There just seems to be and of course, Andrew Cuomo, okay, is gone. There seems to be a disposition just to let people die. Really. It seems that in all four states, there's just a neoliberal attitude that is dominant in the government. And 1 million people have already died. I know the official figures don't show that. However, the University of Washington Institute for Health Metrics Evaluation, the IHME, has estimated that more than 1 million people have died by now, and that figure is still going up. Jeff Ditton says, oh, like most patsies, he didn't actually do it. Devorah asks, are any new people here? Please announce and feel free to ask questions. And Devorah Acts, that's also Devorah Firestone on Facebook, and Devorah Acts on YouTube are the same person. Our daughter, of whom we're very proud. And she says, any new people here, please announce and feel free to ask questions. Well, that's what she said on Facebook. Jeff Denton says, if you cut 85% out of the military budget, we would still be spending more than every other country in the world on the military. Right. And if you cut 85% out of the military budget, we wouldn't need it in order to spend for Medicare for all countrywide, because the government is already spending as much as would be needed to pay for HR 1976. Already spending it in subsidies for private health care and in certain other government programs, such as VA and Medicare. Health care for the indigenous peoples of America. S-CHIP, all that, the subsidies for building facilities and things like that. It all comes to 2.6, 2.7 billion, which is all that's needed to pay for HR 1976. Kay says the NHS in the UK seems to be about the best. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. It certainly is one of the best, but there are very good healthcare systems in France. There are very good healthcare systems in New Zealand. Very good healthcare systems in Australia. Very good healthcare systems in Taiwan. Taiwan has a really good one. That's based on the American model, based on the American Medicare model. Even when it says, what is Dan's position on immigration, particularly from Central America? Oh, I don't know. I wish I had seen that and asked him that question. Antonio says, I would like to share my Medicare for All flashcard, only to emphasize that we do not have to be afraid of insurers because there is an upside for them also for a flashcard. Only Medicare for All can bring the manufacturing and jobs in general back to the USA, and good paying and useful jobs with real value creation for all in all dimensions of human life. It is the human-centered solution we have to embrace, and it was done successfully in other nations. And if the U.S. joins, it will be the paradigm change. Yes, it will be, Antonio. I quite agree. Jeffrey says, yes, by all means, save the guy blocking healthcare reform. Otherwise, you'll get Trump. Sound familiar? Does. Sounds very familiar. And Devorah says, at 30, what are your qualifications? Just notating the spot. Shane says, hey, Devorah. And Devorah says, hi, Shane. Catherine Tokoska says, oh, my God, the hat. Ha ha. Yes, Catherine. You like the hat, huh? She says, I'm here late. Recall, no recall. I'm being told to vote against it because there are only two alternatives and neither will be helpful. I've been out of it. News, politics. So vote no, then vote for Dan. Well, Dan recommends, and I know that he is modestly recommending this, but he's really recommending it because he's really afraid of what a tragedy it would be for Larry Elder to get in. Yeah, he is saying vote no. In other words, vote against the recall and then vote for him. So yes, Catherine, that is what he is asking for. Antonio says, is Make America Progressive Again, MAPA hat. Thank you, Antonio. Steve Wolfbrand said, it's a whole Washington hat. I meant to explain that, Steve. No. Whole Washington people, a lot of whole Washington people wear this hat also. But this hat is the Red Berets hat. The Red Berets is the organization for fighting on all fronts for Medicare for all, or for single payer. And the whole Washington is the organization specifically fighting for a single payer bill in Washington. The Red Berets are very closely allied with them. Many of the whole Washington people are Red Berets and vice versa, but it isn't the whole Washington hat. It is a Red Berets hat for single payer all over the country, at the state level, at the federal level, and just all over. Catherine Tokarska says, I need to vote. Steve Wolfman said, are you voting for this guy? BL says, vote no on the recall, and then pick a second choice. Devorah says, hi, Catherine. The ballot is like this question. 1, should the governor be recalled? So we're asking people, including this candidate, to vote no. Don't recall Newsom, even though we think he's terrible, because there's too much risk. There's too much risk that if we kicked him out, that the one who would get the most votes and therefore become governor would be Larry Elder. Now, that situation may change. Within a week, week and a half, it may change. And maybe, God willing, Dan will be running number 1 then on the second question. Then, for those who vote at the very last minute, it would be rational to vote yes on the recall and then vote for Dan. But right now, it's not, because Dan doesn't even have, to my mind, yet even 1% of the vote. Larry Elder has 18%. And the number of votes for Newsom is very close to 50%. So it's too risky to vote yes when it comes to the recall. And Deborah puts it perfectly.
Yeah, that was great.
Question 2 only works if question 1 has a majority of yes. If it has a majority of no,
Very
then this answer doesn't count. So it's a fail-safe in case Newsom loses question 1. So we're showing a green candidate for question 2. That was extremely well explained by Devorah, my extremely logical daughter.
Yes.
Catherine says, yes, that is what I heard. Okay, a vote no, not for him. If you vote no to recall a governor, you still have to vote for a candidate on the second question, or not, if you chose not to. Steve Wolfman says, the Warriors laugh out loud. Dvorak Act says, at BL, that is what we're asking, Dvorak, or ask of us anyhow. It's what this candidate is asking. Catherine Tokarska says, thank you, Dvorak Firestone, that is what I will do. Catherine says, I am mailing my vote from Montana. And Steve Wolfgren says, I can dig it. And Lana says, oh my God, people are crazy. First one murdered. And our Act says, at BL, Dan Kapelovitz agrees, and many of us do too. Dolores says, wow. Antonio says, thank you, Dan Kapelovitz. Thank you very much for giving us all the privilege of this interview. Steve Wolfbrand says, can he get an endorsement from Kenneth Mejia? I think that would help. Well, Steve Owens is a female Green candidate, but I've heard that Dan is the better candidate. I think he is. Steve says, yes, Rodolfo was super cool. Yeah, he's one of my favorite people anywhere. Steve Wolfbrand says, Angelica Duenas as well. And Jeffrey Denton says, we were talking about working in your own communities on Twitter yesterday, and it's all over Twitter today. And Liesl Girl says, go. Liesl Girl says, hi, Dan. Hi, Joe. Hashtag fight on all fronts, indeed. Jeff explains, Laura took a break from Twitter today. I know she did. But she just came back, and I told her you were wearing your beret. And Dvorak acts. Hi, Liesl Girl, Larry Elder says, I don't have the stomach and temperament, the personality, the drive to be governor. Well, he's being frank also. That was Steve Gonzo said that as Go Start. And Jeffrey Denton says, Fitty is in Pennsylvania. We're all over the place. We are. And Scott is in New York. Except he may still be in Massachusetts, because wasn't he picketing Richie Neal on Saturday? And Dvorak says digital accessibility. Yes, digital accessibility indeed. Liesl Girl says, Joe, we can do a push. Liesl Girl says, Red Berets, Lisa is here. Thank you so much, Lisa. And Dvorak says, thank you for coming, Dan. And Steve says, I should have put my own name on the ballot. I know Jimmy and Steph and Convo Couch and a bunch of other lefties down here out here. Oh, well, my bad. You should have put your name on the ballot. You should have put your name on the ballot. You'd make a better governor than Newsom any day in the week. Beal says, vote no on the recall. Pick a second choice. Then Devora says, yes, we agree. The second choice we are showing you is Dan Kapelovitz. And Steve says, a rakish cavalier in a red beret. C'est toi, which means it is you. I did take French at one time. I remember some of my pronunciation. Devora says, at BL, thanks for coming. Jeffrey Denton says, I remember the days when if a mayor of San Francisco cheated on his wife, his political career would be over. And when was that? When was that? I mean, wasn't it the case that Willie Brown cheated on his wife a lot? Wasn't he cheating on his wife with one Kamala Harris? And CoStar says, CA voting registration ends today. And Steve says, right. Carmen says, oh, I missed it. Device cut off. No juice. No notification. Sorry, Carmen. Steve says, Dan is a good guy, but doesn't seem to be well tapped into what's going on out here on the progressive left channels. Oh, well, no. No, I don't think Dan is a big social media person. I think if he becomes the governor, he's going to have to start to listen. But you know what? If we can manage a miracle and we can get him there, you can bet he's going to start to pay attention to what goes on Twitter. Jeff Denton says, if you're part of the war and healthcare for profit, no matter who establishment, you can pretty much murder someone like Trump says on the street and get away with it. This is one of the myriad reasons why I know we have no functioning democracy and the two parties work together against us, because Trump could have told everyone Biden had 2 brain aneurysms, but he didn't. Steve says the MSM is going after Biden's dementia hard. It's over for him. I don't know. I don't know if it's over for him. If he, I'm not going to say he, because I don't know if he'll be doing it, but if this particular reconciliation bill does get through, he'll be popular again for a while. Jeff Denton says, well, if we just keep calling Kamala the Manchurian candidate over and over and over again, they'll have to prolong his presidency longer than they were planning. Yeah, Kamala the Manchurian candidate. Kay says nobody likes Kamala at all. I think that's quite true. And Kay says, actually, Joe's doing better than I ever thought he would. He was drafted. I didn't think he wanted to win at all. According to the story, he was drafted by his son on his son's deathbed. Kay says he's got to be stressed out with all the BS he's having to deal with now. I don't know. Maybe he's not stressed out. I mean, maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's at home eating ice cream. Steve says Bezos started selling books out of his garage. He killed the bookstores that we all love. What an ugly world we now live in. Steve, there's a lot to that. Before Bezos, we all used to go into those lovely bookstores, spend hours there, looking over books, buying some books, drinking coffee, buying some music. There was so much more to it than just simply going into a bookstore. But that was thrilling enough, just to rummage through all of the great books in some of those bookstores. That was a wonderful part of the 1990s before Bezos came along. Now we do pay less for books, though I'm not sure we do altogether. We certainly do pay less for some books. Jeff Denton says Joshua, the Computer War Games, 1983. Jeff says, how about a nice game of chess? Yeah, it takes more skill to play chess, doesn't it? It's better for what's up here. Evelyn says, wish it were over for the MSM. Well, they're doing their best to kill us still. Steve Wolfbrand says Democrats will be slaughtered in 2022. It's over. Kay says, you're so positive, Steve Wolfbrand. Shake my head. And Steve says he doesn't seem to believe it. Sorry. And Beal says, I love Dr. Firestone. Steve says, yeah, I'm pretty good about this stuff. Catherine Tookart says, oh, that's going to be depressing. Antitrust is an important topic. We'll try to attend. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for coming. Ghostdot says, fire danger is so serious in California. Officials are closing all national forests in the state for 2 weeks, starting Tuesday. Yeah, they're probably going to try to clean a lot of things up to slow those fires down. And PL says, happy day. Kay says, we have too many states. Should have let the South secede when they wanted to. Oh, I don't know, Kay. I don't know. Slavery is just too much. Just too much. Jeffrey Denton says, Bill Gates' family has controlled the University of Washington since long before I was born. When were you born, Jeff? When were you born? I remember when Bill Gates was just a little kid. I remember when he quit school. And Lana says, seems like Dan scooted out pretty quickly. Were you expecting that? Just curious. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know really what to expect of Dan. I think that he just is taking a flyer on this. He doesn't really give the impression of someone who believes that given the context of this and all the other people running, that it's important that he become the governor of California. It seems to me that I have more conviction about that than he does. He has the receipts. He should have the conviction. Steve says, so if China moves on Taiwan, maybe he will get the conviction. Maybe if we can put this tweet storm together, make it go viral, maybe he will then have the conviction. See, so if China moves on Taiwan with Biden and Alzheimer's, I'm very worried. I'm very worried too, because maybe that will give the war hawks a free hand. And we can't have that. Jeff says, Red Berets and National Medicare for All movement, there are one hell of a lot of people in this country with Red Berets now. Whole Washington is our state's universal healthcare advocacy group. Great way to put it, Jeffrey. I don't think I put it as well. Elvira Mahalko says, thank you, Dr. Firestone. I am learning a lot from your shows. Thank you for coming, Elvira. I don't know if you pronounce it Elvira or Elvira, but whichever. Thank you very much for coming. BL says, Dr. Firestone rocks. Steve Wolfbrand says, Michelle is a man. What do they call that, Steve? Is that a trope? Is that what they call a trope? Jeff says, yeah, the other welfare queen, Bill Gates, has a phony out of the garage Cinderella story, too. Well, I don't think his was that kind of Cinderella story. I always had it that his family was fairly well off. He was advanced in school. Okay, he got into Harvard. He quit Harvard because he was too busy with assembly language or something. And he did a spreadsheet. Okay, the two major products of Microsoft were the word processor, okay, and the spreadsheet. And those were looking extremely good as as products. And he wanted to get into the operating systems game, but he didn't have the capability. Okay, and digital research was the major choice for having a microcomputer operating system that was popular. And what he did in order to get into the game was when Gary Kildall, who had a CPM, made himself unavailable to IBM, who was looking for an operating system. That what Bill Gates did was he made a deal to buy the operating system MS-DOS, invented by Seattle Computer, paid $68,000 for it, or $60,000 for it. It was the best deal since the Dutch bought Manhattan Island for $24. And that was the basis for all of the further developments, okay, of Microsoft Windows. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the core of Windows still, even today, Windows 10, the core of it is still some of the code that came out of Seattle Computer in, when was it, 1979, 1980, something like that. I forget the exact date. I was an avid reader of the computer news magazines then, and I well remember Seattle Computer and its computer system and its MS-DOS product, okay, at that time, and I well remember when Microsoft bought the rights to that. I thought to myself then, what a stupid move for Seattle Computer. Bill says, I'm here to tell you that Biden sucks. He was installed. Obama and the Dems cheated Bernie again. Yes, BL, we all believe that here. And we're all very sorrowful about it. Lana says, you can still do that at Mall of America, complete with Starbucks, coffee, and children's book area. I love the place. When I am over there, Barnes & Noble, I believe. Yeah, there are Barnes & Nobles here too. There is a Barnes & Noble. We have a new, what they call downtown area. It's very small, of course, in Loudoun County, Virginia now. Okay, the name of it is One Loudoun. And One Loudoun has a Barnes & Noble. And you can go there and you can drink coffee and you can buy more elaborate food, okay, than that. And you still have the books to browse through. You have comfortable chairs to sit in. It is a wonderful place. But it's very hard to buy books there because, you know, that Amazon, it's just cheaper. And of course, with the pandemic, before the pandemic, we still used to stop over there. And we would stay and we'd look over things and we'd talk. And we would talk with a friend of ours, talk politics for hours, enjoy ourselves over there. It's a beautiful place, classical place like that. Kay says, we could have left the slaves in via the Underground Railroad. Ohio was a big Underground Railroad state back then. Yeah, we could have let the slaves in, but it would have been hard for them to escape from their owners. Jeff says, I was born on October 29th, 1963. 24 days before the last real president of the United States that wasn't owned was murdered by the people who have profited and benefited ever since. A little to the left is because my dad was a Marine at the Bay of Pigs, and I wouldn't have been even born if that president had bowed to the pressure of invading Cuba. But I'm sure that's not the only reason they killed him. No, of course, that's not the only reason. There were lots of reasons. All of them would have made him very dear to us had he had the chance to accomplish them. BL says healthcare is a human right. Kostat says the same, but progressives mocking, fighting on all fronts, mocking ivermectin researchers as paste-eating sheeple. BL says ha ha ha. And BL says what the hell, and BL says ha ha ha. Jeffrey Dayton says yes, his mother's dad was a Federal Reserve chairman. And his father's dad was probably a Rockefeller by marriage to a Rockefeller daughter. Eugenics movement, Planned Parenthood, Bill Gates' father, took over from Margaret Sanger. But try looking up Bill Gates the first, and you'll get thrown off the internet. Really? What's wrong with that? I mean, his father was a doctor, wasn't he? Could be, I just remember a lot. All this information was out there during the late 1970s, early 1980s. I think that Gates's biography then was very well known. Jeff Denton says a lot of descendants of oligarchs and monarchs settled in Pennsylvania and called themselves Pennsylvania Dutch, but they were descendants of ancient Germanic tribes and Roman families and monarchs, just like Hillary and Trump and the rest of them. Hillary is a descendant of ancient German tribes and Roman families? Jeff, you really think that? Hillary Rodham, descendant of ancient Germanic tribes and Roman families? Whoa. And Steve says, I should probably have mowed lawn with Ida on the way. Hashtag save the bees. Steve Wolfman says, good night, everyone. Good night, Steve. Thank you for coming. Jeff Denton says, all I get is that he owned a furniture store in Bremerton, Washington. Jeff says, every single president except for one is related to one English king. Who is the president who is not related to an English king, Jeff? Oh, probably Obama, right? Carmen says, Joe, your mind is a computer. I'm always flabbergasted by your ability to recall and remember pretty much anything. Thank you, Carmen. I think I've been slipping lately. Actually, I do try to refresh my memory as much as I can. To try to keep things fresh. I work at that. At this age, I work on that. It doesn't automatically come to me all the time. Sometimes I can't think of the damnedest things anymore. But I'm still at it, fighting away. So thank you for the compliment. Tomorrow, I will be here with Sherry Wise. We've been trying to do this for the longest time, but have had technical difficulties. But Sherry has a new computer, and I have reason to believe it's going to be easy now. I sure hope it will be easy now. There was a little technical difficulty with Dan today. He sort of they kept asking him for a password, and he didn't have passwords in the operating system he was using, and it's a big crisis just before we came on. Steve Wolfbrand said, I am related to ancient German tribes. I can believe that, Steve Wolfbrand. I think you might have some Dutch in your background, too. Dolores Pierce says, thank you for a great discussion. Good night, all. Good night, Dolores. Thank you for coming, D for Peace. Ghostart says, Pizar, Maxwell, Blinken, Epstein Barr, Luke Brunwell, Stephen Mnuchin, Trump, Clinton, Biden, the club. Who is Stephen Mnuchin related to? And Dolores, look. Okay, it was at 11:11. My comment. The synchronicity. Yeah. Kay says, I'm a descendant of German gypsies and Irish immigrants. And I am a descendant of Hungarian Jewish immigrants and Jewish immigrants from Poland. Okay, and Bonnie is but descended from a German immigrant, okay, and from a mother whose ancestors go all the way back to the DAR.
Yeah.
They were members of the DAR. I know that. So they must go back a very, very long way. Indeed, okay, and Lana's ancestors go back to Plymouth Rock. I know that. And Lana says, ancient German tribe, Neanderthals laugh out loud. Me too, per the DNA test. Jeffrey Denton says, but Martin Van Buren isn't, but I'm related to ancient German tribes as well. Whoa. Jeff says, Steve Mnuchin donated to Kamala Harris's campaigns, of course, and so did Trump and his wife and his daughter. But people are okay with Trump, I guess, because they're stupid and they think he's a philanthropist. Okay, says, thank you for another great discussion. Okay, I love you all. We love you, Kay, as well. So good night, all. I'll see you tomorrow with Sherry Wise.